Morning, another day, another real world test. Today, we're doing on the new Pixel 5a. A, in my mind, when it comes to this series, is affordable. These are the less expensive Pixels, and this is the latest one. So, if you're not familiar, I'm gonna go throughout my day, use this phone as my normal phone. We'll also take some photos on it and some of its competitors, put those up on the screen so you can see how it does, talk about some of the features I like and don't like, and we'll check in on the battery by the end of the day. But, first things first.
Coffee. Check. We're really quickly grabbing coffee at a slightly less busy street in a very busy neighborhood at a cafe called Terremoto, which translates, I think, in Spanish, Portuguese, and Italian into earthquake. And the owner apparently named it that because he thought of coffee in that way. It's like shakes you and wakes you up and gets you going. But yeah, it's a little tiny coffee shop, like literally you can't even sit inside of it. You just go in, you get your stuff, and there's like kind of a sidewalk cafe happening in Chelsea, which is the neighborhood we're in today, and we're gonna be exploring a little bit. While we're here though, let's talk a bit about the design of this phone. Now the design looks very similar to the other Pixels that we've seen lately, like the 4a 5G and the 5, and it's very minimalistic, which I appreciate. So we have a polycarbonate matte finish on the back, which I like as it's like less slippery, it means less fingerprints generally. A mint colored power button, which has some ridges on it now, which is actually useful because it makes it much easier to determine the power button versus the volume buttons that are right next to it just by touch. And we have a large screen with the punch hole camera in the top left corner. Now for a first, on Pixel A series devices, we have IP67 rating, so it's water resistant up to 1.5 meters for up to 30 minutes. Now compared to the 4a 5G, we have a metal unibody frame inside, similar to the Pixel 5, which just gives it a bit more like weight to it. It just feels good. And something else that feels good that is pretty much, I feel like, part of the design language of Pixel, well, up until the Pixel 6 apparently is coming out soon, but that's the rear-mounted fingerprint sensor. It's snappy, it's useful in a world where masks are still a nuisance for facial recognition, and I always turn on the swiping gesture in settings to be able to easily look at notifications by just like swiping down with your finger while using the phone one-handed. And it's a little thing that I didn't really think I cared that much about, but I do slightly miss it when I use another phone. I want to talk about the color of this phone real quick because it's called mostly black. It's the only color that it comes in. And in some lights, yes, it is black. But if you put it next to anything black, well, I don't know about you, but I'd call that green. Very dark green. Okay, and now let's head somewhere that I've been meaning to go and just haven't yet. It's partially the reason that we're doing this video in Chelsea today, but it's very apropos for this video too.
And this is the Google Store. Everyone I know has come check this place out, and yes, it's just a store, but it's the first store that you can check out Nest products, Fitbit, Pixel phones, earbuds, and Chromebooks, all in a place that's owned by Google. Personally, I like the aesthetic, as I like Google's minimalistic design language in general, and it's cool for Google to have a place where people can come and learn about the devices and, you know, get support with a human. And if nothing else, it's an interesting experiment to witness. And I'm curious to see if more start to show up in other places, or if this will just be it. So let's talk about the screen on this phone, as it is the largest one ever on a Pixel, and it measures 6.34 inches compared to the 6.2 inches on the 4a 5G. So yes, it is by 0.1 inches. So not a noticeable amount, but yes, it's a large screen. And while there is something I liked about the frankly tiny, by most phone standards now, Pixel 5, larger displays are useful. There's a reason that phone displays have gotten to this point. Now, that screen is an FHD 60Hz panel, which is pretty common in this price range, but it's also an OLED display, which is at least less common in this price range. That OLED display means colors are brighter, as is the display in general, and I can confirm that I've had no issues seeing it even in pretty bright daylight. Now we have a headphone jack too, that some people might have been missing, but personally, I'm already used to not having one and feel like, judging by the explosive growth of truly wireless earbud sales, most people are probably fine without it. But if you have a nice pair of headphones that plug in, you're probably happy that it's there. We also have dual speakers, using the one at the bottom in combination with the earpiece as a second one, which is kind of the norm now. And while they're not amazing, they don't sound bad at all, and they get pretty loud, honestly. Okay, the store's closing. Let's get out of here and explore Chelsea. I like that. Thank you so much.
No problem.
This is Chelsea Piers, kind of like a sporting and entertainment complex on the edge of Chelsea on the Hudson River. It has a fitness center, it has like soccer fields and baseball fields and a bowling alley and a driving range kind of on one of the piers in the river. While we're here though, let's talk about something that's become pretty synonymous with Pixel phones. They're cameras. Now the Pixel lineup has used the same camera hardware in all of its phones since basically the Pixel 3, with the exception of adding a telephoto to the Pixel 4 and then removing that and adding an ultra-wide instead in the 4a 5G and the 5. Now Google's kind of just relied on their software smarts as like a software company to generate great photos. And despite the hardware, they do a really good job at it. Now this phone uses the same exact setup as its predecessor, the 4a 5G, as well as the 5 that it's supposed to be a less expensive version of. So we have an ultra-wide camera and a main camera, and then Google uses its Super Zoom AI to give you 2 times and beyond, which works well up to a point, but of course loses out to true optical zoom at some point. Now despite the Pixel 6 coming soon with supposedly new camera hardware for the first time in a long time, frankly I feel like we all feel like the Pixel lineup could use new cameras. Subscribe and ding the bell for when I'll do real world tests of those whenever those come out. But on an A series, I honestly have zero complaints that the hardware is the same as it has always been. Because honestly, it produces some of the best straight out of camera images of any phone in this price range, and even phones well above this price range in a lot of scenarios. Now, a lot of flagship devices out there can produce images that are close and even better than the Pixel lineup, but they've just kind of been able to catch up over time. The thing I feel like is super interesting about Google's software is that it basically edits the photo the way like a photographer would, straight in the camera. And I'm sure that's based on a ton of like machine learning algorithms, deciding what photos people liked better and being fed that information, etc., to refine the algorithm. But it works. You guys tell me at the end of this video, when you see all of these photos side by side, which you prefer. I'm very bad. Golf is very hard. Now this is the Highline Hotel, and it's named for the High Line, which is an old, abandoned, essentially elevated railway that runs down through this neighborhood that has since actually been turned into a really cool park with like art installations and green space and places to lounge and even food vendors. Now, I already kind of explored it a little bit in my Microsoft Surface Laptop 4 video, which I'll link below for anyone who wants to go check it out. But this hotel is actually really nice, and in front of it, it has this lovely like garden area that during the day is an Intelligentsia coffee. Yes, I've been here many times. But at night actually turns into a cocktail bar with small bites called Daisy's Cocktail Garden. And honestly, if the weather's nice outside, it is just a really cute place to come hang and have a drink. Oh, and also, of course, there's a double-decker London bus. All right, while we're here, let's talk about kind of the software experience on this device. So the phone has the same chipset as the Pixel 4a 5G and the Pixel 5, and that's the Qualcomm Snapdragon 765G chipset. And that is a mid-range chipset by all accounts, but just as it was in those two devices, it's the same here. It works great. Honestly, there's no slowdowns that I've ever noticed. Everything just seems smooth and fine. Now, you will not get super crazy high frame rates in games, sure, but you can still play pretty much all of them, if not all of them, at least all the ones that I've tried. And some of that comes down to the chipset, but also just kind of Google's flavor of Android, which is pretty streamlined, very optimized. It just doesn't have a lot of fluff on top like some other UIs on top of Android from other manufacturers do. And as with most Pixel phones, it's going to be one of the first to get the latest versions of Android and all of the features that come with that. Also, Google does what they call a feature drop for their Pixel phones, where they just add new software features. And sometimes they're not terribly interesting, but a lot of times they do add some decent functionality that is just kind of a cool benefit as being a Pixel owner. And lastly, let's talk about something that honestly has kind of blown me away about this phone: the battery life. The last few generations of Pixels have arguably fixed a problem that we've had with Pixels for a long time before that, which is battery life. Through using mid-range chipsets, a lot of optimizations, just putting in more battery in the first place, the battery life on those phones is good. This phone though, they have a lot of that same formula, but they added a lot more battery, and I have to say, I love it. This has to be one of the longest lasting phones, not just Pixels, that I've used in a while. I ended up finding myself just like pushing the battery, like doing Wi-Fi hotspots and then recording a bunch of video and photos and not charging it at night just to see what it would do. And I'll show you battery usage, like actual usage, in screenshots that I have when we get back to the apartment, and we'll also kind of conclude our thoughts on this device. Okay, calling it a night. And as promised, here is my usage and screen on time, etc. for today, which, by the sheer fact that it was a real world test and that I filmed a bunch using the phone, took a lot of photos, and just used the phone a lot more than like a typical normal day, that's pretty crazy, honestly. But for experiment's sake, here's another day that was a more normal day so that you can see what that was like. And finally, here's a day I decided to just see how long I could go without charging the phone at all. I made it all day, left it off the charger all night, and then about 7 p.m. or so the next day, I started to get that low power anxiety that you do, and I plugged it into a battery pack. Oh, and by the way, 5G and all the other standard settings were on for all of these days. It only supports sub-6 5G, by the way, not millimeter wave, which is like the faster but less available 5G, just in case you were wondering. Now, the phone as a whole. Well, the camera is as good as you would expect from a Pixel, aka good. The screen is better than at least most phones in this price range. The software is snappy. I do appreciate the like Pixel experience on the phone. And the battery is better than expected. All of that, plus it's $50 less than its predecessor. The Pixel 4a 5G was $499 at launch, and this is $449. As always, I'll leave a link below to the best prices that I could find on the phone, plus where you can find more info if you're curious. If you're not already though, check out my Instagram. Follow me there. I do some behind the scenes stuff and some other fun stuff over there. If you're interested, check it out, appreciate it. As always though, regardless, thanks for watching.